Upon entering, Yifeng informed the attendant that he had some elixirs to auction off. He was quickly introduced to Chao Anshan, a 6th-tier alchemist who looked about as old as dust. Chao gave Yifeng a dismissive glance before inspecting the pill Yifeng handed him. A 9-striped, clear, mysterious pill. Yifeng tilted his head. Is that good? Chao's hands trembled as he held the pill like it was a priceless artifact. Extremely good. You don't understand, 3rd-tier elixirs are notoriously difficult to refine. A mistake in the process ruins the whole batch. Most pills barely reach 6 or 7 stripes, and an 8-striped pill is already considered a treasure. But a 9-striped pill? This is the pinnacle of refinement. Yifeng blinked. Cool. So, how much is it worth? Chao paused, clearly annoyed at Yifeng's lack of appreciation. Well, he began, his tone heavy with condescension. A regular 3rd-tier pill goes for around 100,000 low-tier spirit stones. But this value is hard to estimate. Only an auction can determine its true worth. Yifeng's jaw dropped. Wait, this broken pill is worth 100,000 spirit stones? Chao choked. Broken? This is a masterpiece. What do you mean, broken? Ignoring Chao's indignation, Yifeng handed him another pill. Here, add this one to the afternoon auction too. I'll collect the money later. Chao looked like he might combust from frustration, but he took the pills anyway. From a distance, he could hear Yifeng muttering to himself. I wonder which fool would spend so much on a pill. Chao nearly fell over. Wouldn't that make you the fool, since you're the one selling them? Leaving the auction house, Yifeng popped a clear, mysterious pill into his mouth and casually strolled through town. With 10,000 pills to get through today, he figured he might as well snack on them like candy. That's when he spotted a scruffy stray dog limping in an alley. The poor thing looked miserable, skinny, dirty, and pitiful. Yifeng's heart melted. You're coming with me, little buddy? He said, tossing it a giant bone. Naming the dog Little Yellow, Yifeng quickly concocted a plan. With only a handful of people in the sect Luoqinshui owned by Wolfong and himself, he needed more help wasting resources. Little Yellow was the perfect addition to his wastrel squad. The dog happily devouring pills would save him time. But first, Little Yellow needed a bath. Yifeng took the dog to a nearby restaurant and demanded a premium room for the occasion. However, the waiter refused. Sir, we don't allow dogs inside. Yifeng raised an eyebrow. I didn't ask for your opinion. How much? The waiter's expression didn't budge. No amount of money dash before he could finish. Yifeng was still annoyed. He'd paid 10 times the cost of the room, but the system hadn't counted it as wasteful behavior. Seriously? I just wasted a fortune. Little Yellow, meanwhile, wagged its tail obliviously as hot water was brought in. Once the dog was sparkling clean, Yifeng smiled. All right, Little Yellow, time to get to work. He handed the dog a pill. Without hesitation, Little Yellow gulped it down, happily wagging its tail. Yifeng chuckled. Good boy, we'll get through these pills in no time. Unbeknownst to Little Yellow, it was about to suffer greatly. But for now, the dog enjoyed its happy moments, blissfully unaware of the chaos that came with being Yifeng's pet. Yifeng strolled back into his room, feeling refreshed after his outing. He glanced at Little Yellow, who was sprawled on the floor, snoring away like it owned the place. You're really slacking, Yifeng muttered, poking the dog with his foot. You've only eaten, 2,000 pills? And now you're being lazy. Little Yellow stirred and let out a protesting howl, as if to say, I can't eat another bite. Yifeng sighed dramatically. Fine, I'll join you. He flopped down beside the dog, exhausted from his day of being a wasteful tycoon. As they both dozed off, something incredible began to happen. The thousands of pills Little Yellow had consumed were transforming the scruffy stray into something extraordinary, a mythical beast in the making. Elsewhere, Old Bai was having a leisurely chat with an old friend, Old Xia, who looked particularly smug. Do you know what just came through the auction branch? Old Xia asked, his voice dripping with pride. 2 special 3rd-tier clear mysterious pills. Go on. Guess how many stripes they have. Old Bai rolled his eyes. You've been fussing about this all morning. Fine. 7 stripes, right? Who refined them? Old Xia held up 9 fingers. 9 stripes. 2 of them. Practically perfect, just shy of a 10-striped pill. Old Bai's brows shot up. 9 stripes. Who brought them in? That's the thing, Old Xia said, shrugging. No name, no background. Just a young man who didn't even seem to care about them. Connecting the dots, Old Bai froze. A young man who didn't care about precious 9-striped pills? This had to be Yifeng. He sighed, already feeling a headache coming on. Let's visit this young man, Old Bai said. Old Xia frowned. What's so special about your lady's disciple? You'll see, Old Bai replied cryptically. Meanwhile, at the Tanya auction house, Luo Chinchue had shown up for the afternoon auction. She spotted the two 9-striped clear mysterious pills immediately, their brilliance dazzling even from a distance. She had no idea where they had come from, but she had to have them. Her plan? Use the pills to regain some authority in front of Yifeng and Wolfang. That arrogant disciple definitely doesn't have anything this rare. Once he sees me with these, he'll have to worship me. Luo Chinchue chuckled to herself, imagining the smug look she'd give Yifeng when she flaunted the pills. Back at Yifeng's room, Old Bai and Old Xia arrived, only to find the door locked. Could he be asleep? Old Xia asked. Old Bai scowled. A qualified cultivator shouldn't waste time sleeping. With zero hesitation, he kicked the door open. The scene inside left both men speechless. The table was piled high with 9-striped clear mysterious pills, and the floor was littered with the remnants of even more pills. In the middle of it all, Yifeng and Little Yellow were lazily sprawled out, surrounded by what looked like the aftermath of an alchemical hurricane. Yifeng groggily opened his eyes at the noise. Old Bai, what are you doing here? Finished your tasks already? He yawned, then noticed Little Yellow still lounging on the ground. You silly dog, Yifeng scolded. Always sleeping. Why haven't you finished the pills yet? To everyone's shock, Little Yellow let out a huff of pure disdain and kicked one of the pills away with its paw. Old Xia nearly fainted on the spot. This is a 9-striped clear mysterious pill. It's priceless. And this dog, it's rejecting it. Old Bai, peering closely at Little Yellow, stroked his chin. There's something strange about this dog. Look at the spiritual energy it's absorbing. It's transforming into a beast. No impurities in its body. Quite remarkable. Trying to hold himself together, Old Xia turned to Yifeng. How many of these pills have you fed this dog? Yifeng thought for a moment. Not many. Maybe about 2,000. Old Xia spat out a mouthful of tea he hadn't even been drinking. Grabbing Old Bai by the collar, he yelled, 2,000? Do you realize how precious these pills are? And you let this happen. Aren't you supposed to be supervising him? Old Bai shrugged. What can I do? The kid's too rich. When our master and junior brother Wolfang going to show up? I need reinforcements. Halfway through his chewing, Old Bai paused, glancing at Yifeng. The two clear mysterious pills that sold at the Tanya auction house, they were yours, weren't they? Yifeng smirked. Yep, I threw those mediocre pills in just to see who'd be foolish enough to buy them. Old Xia nearly spat out the pill he was chewing. Mediocre. A single one of those pills sold for 1 million low-grade spirit stones. And you put them up for auction just to mock the buyer? Meanwhile, Luo Chinchue was speeding toward Yifeng's room, clutching the two auctioned pills with pride. She couldn't wait to flaunt them in front of Yifeng. No matter how rich you are, there's no way you could get your hands on something this rare. Wolfang, running beside her, was practically glowing with excitement. Master, I can't believe you spent so much for us. You're amazing. When they finally reached Yifeng's door, Wolfang froze. His wide eyes locked onto the chaotic scene inside, and his trembling hand pointed toward it. Luo Chinchue, still smug, glanced past him and her expression instantly crumbled. Inside, Yifeng, Old Bai, Old Xia, and Little Yellow were all eating pills. Not just any pills, but 9-striped clear mysterious pills. There were scattered pill boxes on the ground, a massive pile on the table, and a general aura of excess that made her head spin. She stared at the chaos, her knuckles white from gripping the auctioned pills. Wait, don't tell me, Wolfang stammered. Master, what's wrong? It was only then that the group inside noticed the newcomers. Old Bai's eyes darted to the boxes in Luo Chinchue's hands, and realization dawned. He elbowed Old Xia. Those are the pills from the auction, aren't they? Old Xia sighed, nodding. They are. Luo Chinchue's mind raced. She had spent a fortune bidding for the pills, thinking they were a rare treasure, only to find out they'd been casually thrown into the auction by her own disciple. The absurdity of it all hit her like a ton of bricks. She laughed first softly, then louder, until she was practically howling. Isn't it funny, Old Bai? She asked, still laughing through gritted teeth. Old Bai winced, unsure how to respond. You did it for their sake, sect leader. Nothing wrong with that. Thankfully, Wolfang broke the tension. Senior brother, he said, practically bouncing. Can I eat the pills too? I want to join the pill gorging. Old Bai and Old Xia lit up with relief. Yes, please, they cried in unison, eager to hand over the burden. Feng grinned. Eat as many as you want, Junior. Wolfang didn't need any more encouragement. Drooling with anticipation, he dove toward the pile, grabbing fistfuls of pills like a kid in a candy store. But as he did, one pill fell from the edge of the table and landed near Little Yellow. Wolfang froze. No, That's a 9-striped, clear, mysterious pill. Don't let the dog dash too late. Little Yellow, already stuffed, lazily kicked the pill away, its expression one of pure disdain. Wolfong gawked, completely stunned. It just kicked it away? Old Xia, unable to take it anymore, turned to Luo Qinxue. Sect leader Luo, you need to manage him. Over 2,000 of these pills wasted on a dog. It's madness. Feng shrugged. What can I say? The dog eats faster than humans. Wolfong, clutching his chest, thought bitterly. Even the dog is more fortunate than me. An hour later, Old Xia, and Wolfong were sprawled on the floor, groaning. Their bellies were so full they couldn't move. Yifeng looked at the table, still piled with over 2,000 pills, and frowned. Turning to Luo Qinxue, he gave her his best, pleading look. Master, please, I need your help. Luo Qinxue crossed her arms. Absolutely not. It's undignified. Please, master, Feng begged. With a sigh, Luo Qinxue relented. Fine, I'll buy the rest of the pills at 10 times their price and send them to my father's sect. That way, they'll be put to good use. Old Bai coughed. You're seriously trying to talk about money with Yifeng? Luo Qinxue froze, realizing her mistake. Blushing, she finally gave in. To persuade her, Yifeng even arranged the pills into a heart shape on a plate, decorating it with roses. Master, he said dramatically. For you. Luo Qinxue blushed even harder but reluctantly picked up a pill. With everyone pitching in, the final pills were consumed, and Yifeng's task was complete. Rewards: Yifeng earned 300 wasteful points for hiring the old men, 1,000 points for completing the task, and a bonus of 3 9-grade soul returning herbs and 5 9-grade gold and silkworm star shining stones. Luo Qinxue, meanwhile, sat off to the side, lamenting. Old Bai, what's the point of me being a sect leader? I don't guide cultivation. I don't provide resources. I just clean up after Yifeng. Old Bai nodded gravely. He's not really a disciple sect leader. He's more like the sect's money god. A wasteful money god. Luo Qinxue muttered, shaking her head. Yifeng turned to Old Xia and asked, Do you know what the 9-leaf soul returning herb is? Unexpectedly, Old Xia's face lit up with excitement. Of course, I'm very familiar with it. It's a legendary spiritual herb. He eagerly began explaining. Each leaf of the soul returning herb represents its medicinal potency. The more leaves, the more powerful it is. But I've never even seen a single leaf soul returning herb, let alone a 9-leaf one. He continued. The soul-returning herb is the most essential ingredient for crafting the soul-returning life-saving pill. With this pill, even if someone has been dead for no more than 24 hours, and their soul has been annihilated, it can bring them back. It's incredibly powerful. Old Xia's tone grew more serious as he added. The life-saving pill is the most urgently needed medicine for any tribulation-crossing realm expert. With its protection, even if someone fails to cross the tribulation and their physical body is destroyed, their soul will remain intact. They can recreate their body and come back to life. It's like being able to hop back and forth between the living world and the underworld. Pausing for a moment, Old Xia glanced at Yifeng with curiosity. But why do you ask? By now, Old Bai had started to sense something unusual. He turned to Old Xia and asked discreetly, Do you know about bamboo demon grass, white spirit flower, and purple thunder fruit? Old Xia nodded. Yes, I know them. These spiritual plants are rare and valuable, but they can still be found in small quantities within major sections. They're not exceptionally extraordinary. Old Bai sighed deeply, then revealed, Well, Yifeng here used those herbs for a foot soak yesterday. Old Xia froze in place, his jaw dropping in disbelief. A foot soak? He exclaimed. That's outrageous. What a massive waste. While Old Xia struggled to process this, Old Bai turned to Yifeng, his expression stern. You must have the 9-leaf soul-returning herb, don't you? Please, whatever you do, don't use it for a foot soak this time. It's a legendary spiritual herb. Yifeng murmured casually. But I have 3 of them. Using one for a soak isn't a big deal, right? Hearing this, Old Xia grew visibly anxious. Absolutely not, he exclaimed, his voice urgent. If you really have 3 9-leaf soul-returning herbs, please sell them to me. I'll give you everything I have. It's a life-saving herb if you actually use it for a foot soak. It would be completely insane. Yifeng, unfazed by Old Xia's reaction, walked over to Luo Qinxue, pulled out a soul-returning herb, and handed it to her. This is a token of respect from your disciple, he said calmly. Luo Qinxue froze, unsure of how to respond. Not only had Yifeng spent 100,000 top-grade spirit stones to become her direct disciple, but he'd also gifted her 400,000 more as a token of respect for accepting him. And now he was handing her a legendary spiritual herb. Her thoughts spun wildly. Am I just mooching off my disciple now? But then, unexpectedly, her thoughts took a risque turn. What if I have to offer my body to him in gratitude someday? She quickly shook her head, forcing herself back to reality. No, I can't accept this herb. But then another thought struck her. I'll need the life-saving pill for my tribulation as well. Meanwhile, Yifeng declared his plans for the remaining 2 herbs. One will go toward my foot soak, he said casually, and the other will go to Old Bai as long as he does some manual labor. Old Bai was overjoyed and immediately expressed his gratitude. However, Old Xia quickly interjected. Are you sure you only want manual labor? Consider me too. I'm quite strong, you know? Don't be fooled by my appearance. Old Xia declared, flexing his transformed, muscular physique. Yifeng blinked, startled by the display, while Old Bai immediately grew anxious and stepped forward to confront him. What are you trying to do? That soul-returning herb is mine. Don't even think about it. The two stared each other down, the tension building as both vied for the herb. Meanwhile, Wolfong, lying on the side and clearly having overeaten, listened to their argument and wondered if he should shamelessly ask his senior brother, Yifeng, if he could join in on the legendary foot soak. Old Xia, deciding to switch strategies, suddenly turned toward Luo Chinxue. Invoking a historical reference, he said, in ancient times, there was Lu Fengxian who paid respects to his adoptive father. Now, there's Xia Tanya pledging allegiance. Luo Chinxue blinked, utterly confused. Old Xia stood tall, clearing his throat. Yes, I've decided. I want to join the Star Soul sect. What? Luo Chinxue was flabbergasted. Old Xia nodded solemnly. I've wandered for half my life, and I deeply regret never joining a sect. If you, Sect Master Luo, don't mind, may I join your sect as an honorary elder? You're a 9th grade alchemist and a mighty tribulation-crossing realm expert, Luo Chenxue said, struggling to process his words. And your Tanya auction house is spread all over the Xiantian continent. Are you sure you want to join our modest Star Soul sect? I'm sure, Old Xiao affirmed, his tone unwavering. To ensure his entry, he even brought up a trump card. Little girl, I held you when you were a baby. If you refuse me, I'll go straight to your father. Luo Chinxue's mouth opened and closed, utterly speechless. Old Xia had his reasons, of course. Seeing Yifeng casually gift and use legendary herbs made it clear the young man had an unimaginable wealth of treasures. If Old Xia didn't establish a relationship now, he might miss out on untold opportunities in the future. Luo Chenxue asked cautiously, but what about the auction house? Old Xia. Oh, I'll leave it to my good-for-nothing son, Old Xia replied dismissively. Old Bai, watching this unfold, sighed in resignation. I admit defeat, Old Xia. I can't compete with your audacity. Smirking, Old Xia replied smugly. I love that look on your face when you can't stand me but can't do anything about it. As for the soul-returning herb, Old Xia added with a sly grin. That'll depend on everyone's performance from now on. This made Luo Chinxue so mad she almost spat blood. She'd never even wanted to expand her sect. First, she ended up with 2 unexpected disciples, and now a 9th grade alchemist? How was she supposed to focus on cultivation and ascend to the higher realm to seek revenge? At that moment, Yifeng, ever the instigator, suddenly asked, by the way, does anyone know about the gold and silkworm star shining stone? The room fell silent for a beat before Old Bai, Old Xia, and Luo Chenxue exclaimed in unison. You have a gold and silkworm star shining stone? Startled by their reactions, Yifeng quickly denied it. I don't have it. I was just asking. But the 3 of them weren't convinced they knew his style. He definitely had the stone. Wolfong, watching this unfold, couldn't hold back his curiosity. Senior brother, where are you even getting all these treasures from? Before anyone could press Yifeng further, Luo Chenxue received a notification. There was an issue back at the sect, and they needed to return immediately. It turned out that her father, Luo Wuming, had arrived with important matters to discuss. However, Luo Chinxue knew the real reason he was here to inspect the progress of her sect. A few hours later, upon their return to the Star Soul sect, they were greeted by Luo Wuming, whose expression was one of deep disappointment. You've greatly disappointed me, he said, his tone sharp. Luo Chinxue's heart sank. Something was clearly wrong. Father, she began cautiously. Luo Wuming let out a frustrated sigh and began venting. It was the recruitment day for the Star Soul sect recently. I wanted to visit during the celebrations, but there wasn't even anyone to serve me tea. I prepared so many gifts and waited the whole day without seeing anyone. If I hadn't sent you a message, I'd probably still be waiting there now. Luo Chinxue was mortified. Trying to salvage the situation, She quickly introduced Ifeng and Wolfong as her disciples. Luo Wuming raised an eyebrow. "I didn't take any disciples," he said skeptically. "These two are my disciples," Luo Chinxue clarified, feeling slightly relieved to have them as a shield. She quickly added, "Please don't be upset, father. I even took Ifeng as my direct disciple." Her father looked at her, clearly shocked. Luo Wuming knew his daughter well. She had never shown concern for anything before. For her to take on a direct disciple was unheard of. He inspected Ifeng closely. "How's his spiritual root?" he asked. "He has no spiritual root," Luo Chinxue replied calmly. "What about his innate talent?" Luo Wuming pressed. "He has none," she said flatly. Luo Wuming's bewildered expression grew as he finally asked, "Then what on earth made him your direct disciple?" Stepping forward, Ifeng explained matter-of-factly, "I bought the position with 500,000 high-quality spirit stones." Luo Wuming was utterly flabbergasted. "Is that even possible? This is just too casual. Daughter, if you needed money, you could have just asked me. There was no need to do this." Meanwhile, Old Bai and Old Xia were both vying for Ifeng's favor. Old Xia even pulled out a stool for Ifeng to sit on, while Old Bai fumed silently. Old Bai finally snapped. "Old Xia, have you completely forgotten martial etiquette? Not to be outdone." Old Bai stepped forward and offered Ifeng a massage, even serving him tea. Watching this absurd display, Luo Wuming was utterly confused. "Bai Tianhong, aren't you an elder of my Star Extreme sect? And Xia Tanya, what are you doing in my daughter's sect?" After a half-hour-long explanation, Luo Wuming finally understood everything: the 9-pattern clear mysterious pills, the 9-leaf soul-returning herb, and more. Amazed, he exclaimed, "Truly, he's a god of wealth not just for my daughter's Star Soul sect, but even for my own Star Extreme sect. I treat him with reverence, too." Old Bai nodded in agreement. He even suspected that Ifeng might hail from a certain special place. However, Luo Wuming quickly interrupted, "Don't mention that place." He looked at his daughter and softened. "As long as you're all fine, I'm content. I just came to see how you're doing." That evening, as Ifeng rested, Wolfong excitedly brought a basin of foot-soaking water. Seeing this, Ifeng raised an eyebrow knowingly. "You want to soak your feet too?" Wolfong scratched his head nervously. "Senior brother, you go first. I'll soak mine after you're done." Ifeng chuckled. "I'm not a stingy person. Bring another basin of water. Let's split the 9-leaf soul-returning herb in half and each have a share." Hearing this, Wolfong was moved to tears. "Senior brother, you're so good to me." What they didn't realize was that Old Bai and Old Xia were secretly watching everything unfold from the rooftop. When they saw Ifeng using the precious 9-leaf soul-returning herb to soak his feet, Old Xia felt his heart shatter into pieces. A day had passed since Ifeng's infamous foot soak, and the effects of the legendary herb were astonishing. Even from such casual usage, Ifeng's body and soul were significantly purified. As a result, he now had a total of 2,510 wasteful points. Meanwhile, today's wasteful product had been refreshed. 10,000 fragments of Underworld Sword Intent. Curious and unfamiliar with their use, Ifeng took one fragment out for testing. To experiment, he called over Little Yellow, placing the fragment on the dog's forehead. Immediately, a gust of wind surged as the idea of the Underworld Sword Intent emerged in Little Yellow's mind. From the outside, however, nothing looked out of the ordinary. Ifeng tilted his head, disappointed by the lack of any spectacular effects. Still, with his years of experience as a bookworm, he could tell from the name alone that this was likely a valuable item. He asked the system if he could use the wasteful product himself, but the system flatly rejected him. If Ifeng wanted to use it personally, a significant number of his wasteful points would be deducted. Ifeng sighed in frustration. Using it himself was off the table, and he couldn't exactly ask for help either. What if someone else took the fragments and didn't return them? That would be disastrous. Thinking this, he hugged Little Yellow and returned to his room. Elsewhere, Luo Wuming was suggesting to Luo Chinxue that Ifeng and Wolfong head to the Heavenly Dao battlefield to gain experience. Luo Chinxue was hesitant. While she trusted Ifeng to some extent, she was far more concerned about Wolfang's safety. Sensing her worry, Luo Wuming assured her, "Don't worry, I'll send a few inner disciples from the Star Extreme sect to accompany them." However, he couldn't help but ask, "Why do you have so much faith in Ifeng? He has a lot of treasures, sure, but isn't he just a mortal? In the Heavenly Dao battlefield, even the weakest cultivator or beast could easily kill him." Luo Chinxue clarified, "While it's true that he lacks spiritual roots, Ifeng has already cultivated to the 9th peak of the Qi activation realm. His spirit sea is 20 times larger than mine." Luo Wuming's jaw dropped in disbelief. What? He couldn't believe it. Luo Chenshua herself held the Star Extreme Sect's record for the largest spirit sea. And yet here was a mortal without spiritual roots whose spirit sea dwarfed hers by such a staggering margin. Suddenly, a powerful surge of sword intent erupted nearby, interrupting their conversation. The overwhelming energy drew the attention of both Luo Wuming and Luo Chenshua, as well as Wolfong and Old Xia. Thinking that an expert wielding underworld sword intent was attacking, they rushed toward the source, fully prepared to fight. However, when they arrived, they were greeted with an entirely different sight. Ifeng was casually playing frisbee with Little Yellow, who was the one emanating the powerful sword intent. Luo Wuming, Luo Chenshua, and the others stood frozen in shock. The one possessing underworld sword intent was a dog. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they wouldn't have believed it. Noticing their presence, Ifeng turned to them, puzzled. "Why are you all here?" Luo Chenshua ignored his question and instead demanded, "What's going on?" Did Little Yellow comprehend the underworld sword intent on his own? Ifeng waved her off. "How is that possible? He's way too dumb to figure it out himself. I just had some fragments of underworld sword intent, so I used them on him." Hearing this, everyone was dumbfounded. Such a waste. Both Luo Chenshua and Old Xia glared at Ifeng as if they were ready to lecture him. Seeing their reactions, Ifeng grew a bit nervous. Luo Chenshua explained in a cold tone, "The underworld sword intent is incredibly rare, even in the heavenly Dao battlefield. Obtaining it is nearly impossible. It all depends on one's luck. Yet you casually used such precious fragments on a dog? Even if you're being wasteful, you should at least know your limits." Ifeng, trying to shift the conversation, curiously asked, "What exactly is the heavenly Dao battlefield?" Luo Chenshua sighed and explained, "The Xiantian continent is just one of many lower realms. Every lower realm has access to the heavenly Dao battlefield, and based on one's strength, they're sent to different areas. No one knows exactly how the battlefield came to be, but it's filled with cultivation resources, legacies, treasures, and more. However, it's also incredibly dangerous. Apart from threats from beings of other dimensions, the native beasts inside are extremely powerful. It's not uncommon for someone to lose their life there." After hearing this, Ifeng's system issued a new mission. Go to the second layer of the heavenly Dao battlefield and slay 100 beasts at the 9th peak of the Qi activation realm. Seeing the reward, a massive number of wasteful points, Ifeng's interest was piqued. However, he hesitated. He had plenty of spiritual power but lacked martial skills and combat experience. What should he do? At that moment, Luo Wuming asked Ifeng, "How many fragments of underworld sword intent did you use on the dog?" Ifeng hesitated before answering, "Not many. Just about 10,000 pieces." The moment those words left his mouth, Luo Wuming, Luo Chenshua, Old Bai, and Old Xia all turned to stare at him fiercely. They looked as though they wanted to tear him apart on the spot. 10,000 pieces? Luo Wuming's voice was filled with disbelief. "You're insanely wasteful. Something so precious, something everyone desires, and you gave it all to a dog." Ifeng defended himself sheepishly. "I'm sorry," but in his heart he thought smugly, "I'd do it again if I had the chance." Sensing that Luo Chenshua was on the verge of losing control and slapping him to death, Luo Wuming stepped in. "Chenshua, let me take him away before you do something you'll regret." Grabbing Ifeng, Luo Wuming led him off. "Where are we going?" Ifeng asked curiously. "Star Soul Sect was only established for Chenshua to hone her temperament," Luo Wuming explained. "The real sect backing her is the Star Extreme Sect." At that moment, Luo Wuming was leading Ifeng toward the Star Extreme Sect, planning for him to join the senior brothers there. As they made their way through the heavenly Dao battlefield, Ifeng seized an opportunity to ask, "Master, is the Star Extreme Sect powerful? Do they need any assistance? Are the sect members well-fed? Perhaps I could gift everyone some spiritual stones to spend." The more Ifeng spoke, the more irritated Luo Wuming became. Finally, he snapped, spinning around to glare at him. "Shut up. Our Star Extreme Sect is a holy land, very wealthy, and doesn't need your concern." That night, they stopped at an inn. Ifeng, excited for what the next day might bring, eagerly looked forward to seeing what extravagant item he could spend his resources on. The following morning, as soon as he woke, Ifeng hastily opened his system. Today's wasteful item was displayed: 100,000 high-grade spiritual stones. Relieved, he thought that shouldn't be too hard to spend. Next, Ifeng decided to try drawing a martial skill. Specifying an upper-tier human-level martial skill, he spent 100 wasteful points and obtained the Fire Dragon Fist technique. Feeling unusually lucky, Ifeng smiled. This kind of skill usually took him several tries to draw. But his smile froze moments later when the system revealed a problem. The Fire Dragon Fist required fire elemental spiritual energy to activate. Panic set in. Where am I supposed to find fire elemental spiritual energy? Yifeng thought, frustrated by his lack of spiritual roots. Sensing his plight, the system suggested transforming his existing spiritual energy into a fire attribute. To his surprise, Yifeng realized he could transform his spiritual energy into any elemental attribute. Intrigued, he prepared to test out the power of the fire dragon fist. However, before he could begin, Luo Wuming's voice rang out. Yifeng, it's time to move. Reluctantly, Yifeng abandoned his test and joined Luo Wuming for the journey. As they traveled, Yifeng began throwing spiritual stones into the air from his flying sword, scattering them like rain over the lands below. Luo Wuming, flying ahead, turned back in disbelief. Yifeng, what are you doing? Yifeng responded with a straight face. I'm bestowing gifts from the sky, creating windfalls for the lucky. Visibly irritated, Luo Wuming snapped. Even if you have a lot, you shouldn't be this wasteful. One day, when you have nothing left, you'll regret it. Suddenly serious, Yifeng replied, Master, do you know what the most painful thing in life is? For someone devoted to swordsmanship, it's dying without comprehending the true essence of the sword. For an alchemist, it's dying without creating a legendary elixir. For a formation master, it's never crafting the ultimate formation before death. So for me, the most painful thing would be to die with money unspent. And with that, Yifeng continued tossing spiritual stones into the air as they traveled. Before long, they arrived at the Star Extreme sect. Compared to the desolate Star Soul sect, the Star Extreme sect was the epitome of luxury, brimming with resources and grandeur. After their arrival, Luo Wuming approached Manager Song, entrusting Yifeng to his care. In a few days, he explained, Yifeng will join the sect disciples heading to the heavenly Dao battlefield. With that, he departed swiftly, leaving Yifeng behind. Yifeng greeted Manager Song warmly. I'll be relying on your care and guidance, Manager Song, he said, all smiles. While waiting for his accommodations to be arranged, Yifeng overheard a commotion nearby. Curious, he inquired about it. Manager Song explained, Today is the day for the outer sect and inner sect disciples competition. Hearing this, Yifeng was intrigued and asked if he could watch the matches. At that exact moment, the system issued him a new mission. Take over a platform and defeat 100 opponents of the same realm. Success would reward him with 500 wasteful points, while failure would cost him the same amount. Excited by the challenge, Yifeng's eyes lit up. Without hesitation, he made his way to the battle platforms and claimed an empty one for himself. Seeing this, the Star Extreme sect disciples were puzzled. They could tell Yifeng wasn't one of them, and some speculated he might be from another sect, here to challenge them. Stepping onto the platform, Yifeng announced confidently, I am at the pinnacle of the Qi Activation Realm's 9th stage and the direct disciple of Luo Chenchue. Today, I'm here to hold this platform, and I hope my fellow disciples will show me some consideration. The crowd was stunned. The Sacred Lady's direct disciple? They murmured in astonishment. Moments later, a disciple named Men Yang stepped forward. From the crowd's reaction, it was clear Men Yang had a strong reputation. With a proud smile, Men Yang asked, I reached the pinnacle of the Qi Activation Realm's 9th stage in just 3 years. How long did it take you, brother? Yifeng replied casually, Not long at all. From the opening of my spirit sea to its pinnacle, it took me about 10 minutes. From there to the pinnacle of the Qi Activation Realm's 9th stage, perhaps a little over 20 minutes. Men Yang froze, utterly dumbfounded. What the hell are you talking about? Are you mocking me? Yifeng's words sent waves of disbelief through the crowd. None of the disciples believed him. Breaking through so many realms in just over 20 minutes? That was absurd. Some joked that they spent more time in the restroom than that. Many scoffed, dismissing Yifeng as arrogant. Some even questioned whether someone so brazen was worthy of being the Sacred Lady's direct disciple. But Yifeng paid no heed to their doubts. Believe it or not, he said lightly. Men Yang, unwilling to let the matter go, lunged forward to launch the first attack. This gave Yifeng the perfect opportunity to test his fire dragon fist. In an instant, a fiery apparition of a dragon materialized, stunning everyone watching. Men Yang, in particular, was shocked by the sudden display of power. With no chance to escape, Men Yang summoned his long sword and slashed at the fiery dragon. A massive disturbance erupted across the dueling platform, even affecting the bystanders. But no matter what Men Yang tried, he couldn't withstand Yifeng's overwhelming surge of spiritual energy. A disciple in the crowd pointed and exclaimed, The fiery dragon hasn't disappeared, it's still chasing him. Panicking, Men Yang shouted, How the hell do you even fight this? I want to go home to my mom. Meanwhile, Yifeng stood relaxed on the platform, striking what he thought was a cool pose. With a smirk, he chanted, "Fire Dragon Fist," and just like that, multiple fiery dragons manifested, each more dazzling than the last. As fiery apparitions emerged, all glaring ominously at Menyang, the terrified disciple cried out, "Where did this monster come from?" In sheer panic, Menyang decisively jumped off the platform, admitting defeat without hesitation. Ifeng, brimming with the confidence of a martial arts master, struck a heroic pose and declared, "Who's next? I want to defeat 100. At that moment, Ifeng was having the time of his life, reveling in the euphoria of battle. With his seemingly infinite spiritual energy, he recklessly deployed the Fire Dragon Fist again and again, resulting in massive explosions across the arena. The chaos frightened all the disciples, sending them fleeing in terror. Watching this, Manager Song buried his face in his hands and groaned, "I shouldn't have brought this guy here." He couldn't help but lament the extensive damage to the sex properties. But Ifeng couldn't have cared less about Manager Song's concerns. Caught up in the thrill of a fantasy world come to life, he was completely immersed in his battle frenzy. Realizing the situation was spiraling out of control, Manager Song immediately ordered over 200 disciples, all at the 9th peak of the Chi activation realm, to subdue Ifeng. The disciples were stunned. "Is this guy really planning to take on over 200 of us?" One muttered in disbelief. Another chimed in, "No wonder the Sacred Lady took him as her direct disciple. He's terrifyingly powerful. If he wins this battle, he'll surely secure a place in the dragon ranking in the future." Others eagerly anticipated the outcome, thinking if he wins, he'll become famous overnight. But if he loses, he'll be utterly humiliated. Manager Song took the lead, commanding the disciples to raise a spiritual barrier. A massive energy shield materialized in front of them, shimmering with power. Ifeng's eyes widened. "They can even do that?" he muttered in surprise. "Even though I have abundant spiritual energy, I don't think I can break that with just my human-level martial art technique." Determined, Ifeng began drawing more powerful martial techniques from his system. Spending 700 wasteful points, he acquired the 9 Radiance Thunder Lotus, an Earth-level superior martial technique. Still not satisfied, he drew again. This time, after expending 900 points, he obtained the Water Dragon chant. Even then, Ifeng felt it wasn't enough. After one more draw, costing another 700 points, he acquired the Wind Whirls, Raging Sands technique. Now armed with techniques from multiple elements, Ifeng finally felt ready. He initiated his assault with the 9 Radiance Thunder Lotus. In an instant, a radiant lotus-shaped apparition materialized overhead, its thunderous energy crackling in the air. Before the disciples could recover from their shock, Ifeng unleashed the Water Dragon chant, summoning a powerful water dragon apparition. The disciples panicked. "What kind of monster is he?" one shouted. "He possesses not only the fire element but also thunder and water. That means he has 3 spiritual roots." But before they could process this, Ifeng struck again, unleashing the Wind Whirls, Raging Sands technique. The wind attribute attack merged with the other techniques, creating a devastating elemental combination. The overwhelming force of the combined techniques was directed straight at the spiritual barrier. Chaos erupted among the disciples as they realized they couldn't fend off such an attack. Manager Song stood frozen, dumbfounded. Not just 3 spiritual roots. Could he actually possess 4 spiritual roots? Then, Ifeng shocked everyone yet again by unleashing another thunder attribute technique. The protective barrier, which had been formed by 200 disciples, shattered under the onslaught. Letting out a triumphant laugh, Ifeng stood victorious as all 200 disciples voluntarily surrendered, realizing they stood no chance against him. Even the overseer, hovering midair, was left speechless. Initially, he had wanted to suppress Ifeng's momentum, but now, seeing Ifeng's seemingly limitless spiritual energy and his mastery of several Earth-level superior martial techniques, the overseer couldn't help but think, this young man will surely rank in the top 10 of the dragon ranking in the future. But Ifeng wasn't done. "Who else dares to challenge me?" he taunted, looking around. The disciples were utterly flabbergasted, wondering how he still had so much energy left. Meanwhile, inside the sect's grand hall, Luo Wuming had summoned several core disciples. The disciples looked puzzled, unsure of why they had been gathered so suddenly. Luo Wuming stepped forward and began explaining, "I wanted to inform you that soon, you will have a new junior disciple. However, he is currently only at the 9th peak of the Chi activation realm. You'll need to take extra care of him." At this, the room erupted in animated discussions. "Our Star Extreme sect is one of the top sects on the Xiantian continent," one disciple exclaimed. "To become a core disciple, one must have exceptional talent, comprehension, and spiritual roots." Another, Qin Haoyu, asked skeptically, Master Luo, can you tell us about the exceptional qualities of this new junior disciple? Luo Wuming sighed and spread his hands. All you need to remember is that he is very rich, extremely rich, and he spends a lot, excessively so. The room fell silent, the disciples staring in disbelief. What? That's considered a special quality? One blurted out. No matter how rich he is, he couldn't possibly be wealthier than our sect, right? Another muttered. Master, you must be joking with us. But Luo Wuming wasn't joking. You'll understand after spending some time with him, he said with resignation. How can anyone compare to him? Finally, the group couldn't hold back and turned to Luo Wuming, their voices tinged with a mix of confusion and accusation. Sect Master, are you sure this is the same junior disciple you said had no special qualities? Luo Wuming was silent for a moment, feeling cornered. Truthfully, he hadn't been aware of the extent of Yifeng's capabilities. He sighed, unsure of how to respond. Qin Haoyu, one of the core disciples, inquired, Manager Song, where did the junior disciple go? Manager Song replied, he went back to his residence in the Inner Peaks, 111th courtyard. Hearing this, the core disciples couldn't hold back any longer. They hurried off to meet this remarkable junior disciple, leaving Luo Wuming standing behind. Manager Song, ever the gossip, couldn't resist asking Luo Wuming, Sect Master, are you planning to accept Yifeng as the 6th core disciple of the sect? Hearing this, Luo Wuming's face darkened, and he warned sternly, Manager Song, you must not inform the 3 ancestral elders about this. Yifeng is my daughter's personal disciple, and no one can take him away. Manager Song, spreading his hands in a helpless gesture, replied, even if I don't tell them, it's pointless. Yifeng's achievements have already spread throughout the sect. Not just the 3 ancestral elders, but even the 4 great ancestral elders already know. Luo Wuming sighed heavily, muttering, this is going to be troublesome. Let's see how the kid decides. Thanks for watching, guys. Comment Flamingo and subscribe for the next part.